The studio lights glared down, making the air feel heavy as Dan Bongino sat across from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. His jaw was tight, eyes flashing with an anger barely held back. What began as a simple political interview on his podcast quickly turned into one of the most talked-about moments of the year. Bongino slammed his fist on the desk, the sound sharp and sudden. "You think you can come on my show and lie to my audience?" His voice was loud, cutting through the tension in the room. But Crockett didn't flinch. Instead, she sat calmly, a quiet smile on her lips, as if she had prepared for this exact moment. What she said next wasn't just a reply, it was a statement that silenced Bongino and sent shockwaves through social media. This wasn't just another political debate. It was a lesson in handling pressure with grace and intelligence, showing how calm strength can defeat aggressive tactics. Before we go deeper into what happened, imagine being there in that studio. The tension was so thick you could feel it pressing down on everyone. Bongino, a former Secret Service agent turned conservative commentator, believed he had the upper hand. He was ready to overwhelm Crockett with his aggressive style, the kind of questioning that had made him famous. But Crockett wasn't like other guests. She arrived early, going over her notes quietly while Bongino paced, gearing up for the attack he thought would end the interview quickly. His producer had given him a list of questions designed to trip her up, to make her look weak and out of touch. The plan was clear: hit hard, don't stop until she cracked it. But Crockett, a seasoned lawyer and politician from Texas, was ready for this kind of fight. While Bongino was building his strategy, Crockett was preparing hers, staying calm, focusing on facts, and mentally rehearsing responses. She had faced worse than shouting before. Years as a civil rights attorney had taught her how to stay steady even when under attack. She wasn't there to get rattled or play the victim. She was there to win the conversation by staying composed. As the cameras rolled and the interview began, the difference in their styles was immediately clear. Bongino was loud and forceful, cutting off answers, trying to control every moment. Crockett was calm and measured, letting her facts speak for themselves. She answered his accusations with data and examples, never raising her voice or losing her focus. The contrast was striking. Bongino's approach was to dominate by volume, to wear down his guest with non-stop pressure. Crockett's approach was to absorb the tension and respond with clear, direct answers. The studio crew later said they had never seen a guest so relaxed in the face of such aggression. This wasn't just a clash of personalities, it was a battle between two ways of doing politics, one built on shouting and intimidation, the other on preparation and professionalism. And as the interview went on, it became clear that Bongino's usual tactics weren't working. Crockett wasn't just holding her ground, she was shifting the power in the room. What happened in those tense minutes would soon be seen by millions and become a defining moment. It was more than an interview, it was a turning point in how political debates could be handled. For a moment, calm won over chaos. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake up the political media world. Dan Bongino's rise to conservative media fame wasn't by accident. After years as a Secret Service agent protecting presidents, he turned his focus to politics and media. His style was loud, aggressive, and relentless. He built his audience by challenging Democrats with rapid-fire questions, interruptions, and a take-no-prisoners attitude. His fans loved his catchphrases and how he pushed back hard against what he called the liberal agenda. He wasn't just a commentator. Bongino had tried running for Congress and Senate, though unsuccessfully. Those losses seemed to fuel his fire, driving him to create a media empire based on confrontation. His show was a top conservative podcast, known for its intense debates and viral moments. Bongino thrived by being the loudest voice in the room, overwhelming guests with volume and energy. His approach was simple: never let opponents finish a thought, dominate the conversation, and make Democrats look weak or foolish. On the other side sat Jasmine Crockett, a sharp contrast to Bongino's style. Before Congress, she was a civil rights lawyer in Texas, known for standing up against powerful interests. Her career wasn't easy. She grew up working multiple jobs, put herself through law school, and defended clients in high-pressure situations. That experience shaped her ability to stay calm under fire and respond thoughtfully to tough questions. Crockett's shift from criminal defense to civil rights law meant facing down some of the toughest challenges in Texas politics. She stood up against police brutality and systemic discrimination, even when threatened and attacked personally. Her reputation in Congress quickly grew as someone who was not just smart, but unflappable under pressure. Multiple viral moments from hearings showed her staying composed while delivering sharp, effective responses. This interview was more than just a clash bet. Between two politicians. It was a meeting of two very different worlds and styles. Bongino represented old-school, aggressive media, using volume and force to win. Crockett stood for a new way, using preparation, facts, and calm confidence to counter bullying. Their showdown wasn't just about policy, it was about how political conversations could be had in a country growing tired of shouting matches. The stakes were high. The interview took place just weeks before a crucial election, where every viral moment could influence voter opinions. Both Bongino and Crockett knew millions would watch, making the pressure even greater. Bongino had his familiar studio, his home turf, with cameras and set pieces designed to boost his dominance. Crockett walked in knowing she was entering an arena crafted for conflict. But she was ready. Her preparation was meticulous. She studied Bongino's style, learned his triggers, and rehearsed responses with her team. She even studied top trial lawyers to see how they stayed cool under hostile questioning. For Crockett, this wasn't just a media appearance. It was a test of her ability to maintain professionalism while standing firm. What made this matchup especially compelling was how it reflected broader issues in American politics. The country was growing exhausted with political theater where yelling drowned out reason. People wanted leaders who could fight hard without losing their composure. Crockett embodied that hope, while Bongino represented the old guard still relying on volume to get the upper hand. Their backgrounds told a story too. Bongino's path from Secret Service to conservative media star showed a man who used anger and confrontation as his tools. Crockett's journey through law and civil rights showed a woman who believed strength came from knowledge and calm under pressure. This set the stage for a clash that wasn't just personal, it was symbolic of a nation divided over how political debates should be conducted. The interview started out like any other political discussion, but you could sense the tension rising from the first exchange. Dan Bongino opened with his usual sharp tone, immediately questioning Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's voting record. His voice carried an edge that his listeners recognized, a signal that the attack was coming. "Your party talks about helping working families," he said, "but your policies are destroying the middle class. How do you justify that?" Crockett responded calmly, without hesitation. She cited specific data and examples from her district, explaining how the legislation she supported aimed to support working families. But Bongino wasn't interested in a real answer. He cut her off, raising his voice. "That's not what I asked. Are you going to answer or just give me talking points?" It was a classic move, pretend the opponent hasn't answered, so you can push harder. But Crockett stayed steady. "I did answer," she said clearly. "If you want to discuss details, I'm happy to, but I won't be sidetracked by accusations." Her tone was firm but polite, showing she wasn't rattled. Bongino, growing more frustrated, mocked her response. "Lawyer double talk," he said, as if the facts she gave were just clever tricks. The tension in the room was thickening. Behind the scenes, Bongino's team was encouraging him, knowing that a heated confrontation meant more viewers and shares online. They were ready to ramp up the pressure. Bongino continued pressing, interrupting, trying to break Crockett's calm. Yet, she answered every question with facts, never rising to his bait. The crew noticed how her confidence seemed to throw Bongino off his usual game. As the conversation shifted to immigration, Bongino aimed for a personal jab. "You represent Texas, but you vote like someone disconnected from the border crisis. How do you sleep knowing your policies put American lives at risk?" It was a loaded question meant to corner her. Crockett, however, remained unfazed. She described her visits to the border, conversations with agents and leaders, and bipartisan efforts she supported to address the issue. This answer, grounded and sincere, didn't give Bongino the reaction he wanted, but... So he escalated, shouting about Democrats dodging questions and spinning facts. But Crockett was having none of it. I've answered every question with fire. E.T., she said firmly. I won't join a shouting match just for drama's sake. Her calm defiance was a clear signal. She controlled the conversation. The room grew more charged as Bongino's frustration mounted. He raised his voice higher, trying to regain control through volume. But the more he shouted, the more he seemed to lose his usual grip. Crockett's calm presence made him look unstable in comparison. The production crew captured every moment, knowing this clash was turning into something special. This first phase of the interview set the tone for what would come next, a showdown where cool professionalism faced off against aggressive confrontation. Crockett's ability to stick to her points without losing composure was already changing the narrative. Bongino's attempts to dominate were faltering, and viewers watching could see the balance of power shifting. The moment the tension hit its peak was unforgettable. Dan Bongino, frustrated that his usual aggressive tactics weren't working, suddenly stood up. He leaned over the desk, his face flushed red, finger pointed directly at Jasmine Crockett. His voice blasted through the studio. You think you can come into my house on my show and lie to my audience? You think you're some hotshot lawyer who can outsmart me? I've been doing this longer than you've been in politics. The volume was deafening. Bongino's energy filled the room as he tried to intimidate Crockett, his body language aggressive and overpowering. It was political theater at its worst, designed to force a reaction, to break his guest. But Crockett remained seated, calm and composed. She didn't raise her voice or flinch. Instead, she held his gaze with steady eye contact, her posture unshaken. What she did next was masterful. She smiled, not a sarcastic smirk, but a genuine, confident smile that shifted the room's energy. Suddenly, Bongino's outburst looked like a tantrum, while Crockett appeared as the steady, professional adult in the room. The cameras captured the stark contrast perfectly. One man, losing control. One woman holding her ground. When Bongino finally paused to catch his breath, Crockett spoke in a calm, clear voice. Mr. Bongino, I respect your passion, but your audience deserves better than watching you yell at someone who came here in good faith to discuss real issues. Her words landed like a precise strike. She acknowledged his feelings without validating his behavior and positioned herself as the reasonable party. Bongino stood there, stunned and silent for a moment. His usual confident swagger had vanished, replaced by confusion and frustration. Crockett didn't stop. She continued, her tone steady and firm. I understand your business model is built on conflict and controversy, but I'm not here to be part of a performance. I'm here to talk about policies that affect real people. That sentence sealed the moment. The power dynamic flipped completely. Bongino, who built his career on aggressive confrontation, found himself speechless while Crockett sat calmly, delivering a devastating critique of his approach. The studio, the cameras, even the crew felt the shift. The viral moment had arrived. The aftermath was immediate. Clips of Bongino's meltdown and Crockett's calm response spread like wildfire across social media. Millions watched and shared. The contrast between the shouting man and the composed Congresswoman became a symbol of a larger political conversation. Could calm professionalism win in a world dominated by loud conflict? Almost immediately after the interview ended, the clips began flooding social media. The segment where Dan Bongino erupted in anger while Jasmine Crockett stayed calm quickly went viral, shared by millions across platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The hashtag #CrockettCalm started trending nationally within hours, capturing the public's imagination. Commentators from all sides weighed in, surprised by the widespread reaction. Even some conservatives who usually supported Bongino found themselves praising Crockett's professionalism and criticizing his loss of control. One prominent conservative influencer tweeted, I watch Bongino regularly, but that was embarrassing. Crockett handled herself like a pro while he looked like he was having a meltdown. Viewers expressed a clear preference for Crockett's composed demeanor over Bongino's pouting. Many said her calmness showed real strength and leadership, a breath of fresh air in today's toxic political climate. Comments flooded in, applauding her ability to remain respectful and fact-driven under intense pressure. The reaction wasn't limited to social media. News outlets across the political spectrum picked up the story, dissecting the interview as a turning point in political communication. Experts called Crockett's approach a textbook example of how to maintain authority without losing professionalism, while warning that Bongino's style might be becoming outdated. Even Bongino's own audience showed signs of doubt. Longtime listeners expressed disappointment that their favorite host lost his temper instead of sticking to facts and respectful debate. One subscriber wrote, "Sumabay na." I've listened for years, but watching him yell at Crockett was hard to watch. She answered every question perfectly. The viral moment also sparked important conversations about gender in politics. Female commentators praised Crockett for handling the situation with grace, noting how difficult it is for women to maintain respect under attack without being unfairly labeled as emotional or shrill. Former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki called it masterful. Campaign donors and political strategists took note too. Crockett's fundraising surged in the weeks following the interview, with donations coming from all across the country. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee began featuring her as a rising star with a unique style of calm professionalism that voters were responding to. Republican strategists quietly debated whether the aggressive, shouty approach would remain effective. Some began advising candidates to focus more on facts and respectful dialogue, sensing a shift in voter preferences. The interview had not only changed perceptions of these two politicians, but potentially the entire political media landscape. The confrontation between Dan Bongino and Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a single viral moment. It signaled a shift in American political communication. The old way of dominating diva, teased with loud interruptions, and shouting was being challenged by a new approach. Calm, fact-based professionalism. Across the country, political watchers and communication experts saw this interview as a turning point. Colleges began using it as a case study to teach future leaders how to handle hostile situations with dignity and control. Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Georgetown explained that Crockett's performance proved you don't have to shout to be heard, and sometimes the coolest head truly is the strongest. This shift also stirred debate inside media circles. Network executives questioned whether the aggressive, confrontational style that had dominated political talk shows was sustainable. Viewers were showing they preferred thoughtful discussion over yelling matches. Some hosts privately admitted they might need to change tactics to avoid looking like bullies on camera. The interview also touched on important gender dynamics in politics. Women leaders often face double standards, being labeled shrill when they push back or emotional if they respond strongly. Crockett's ability to be firm yet composed challenged those stereotypes, earning respect from female politicians and commentators alike. Politically, the interview raised the stakes for upcoming elections. Campaign teams across parties recognized that voter fatigue with aggressive political theater was real. Many voters wanted leaders who could stand firm without resorting to shouting. Crockett's rise in fundraising and national profile suggested that calm professionalism could be a winning strategy. Even Bongino's conservative allies acknowledged her skill, some privately expressing respect despite political differences. The idea that strength requires volume was no longer universally accepted. The interview hinted at a future where political debates might focus more on substance and less on spectacle. Finally, the interview left a lasting legacy beyond politics. It reminded the nation of the power of dignity and respect in conflict. Jasmine Crockett showed that sometimes the best way to handle a bully is simply to refuse to be bullied. And that message continues to resonate, inspiring a new generation of leaders and citizens alike. In this explosive political showdown, Dan Bongino loses his cool during an interview with Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, but it's her calm, composed response that steals the spotlight and goes viral. Watch how Crockett expertly handles Bongino's aggressive tactics, turning what was meant to be a hostile ambush into a masterclass in professionalism and political communication. This viral moment has sparked a national conversation about the future of political discourse, with viewers across the spectrum praising Crockett's calm under pressure and criticizing Bongino's outburst. If you're tired of shouting matches and want to see how dignified debate can win, this video is a must-watch. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more deep dives into the moments shaping American politics.